Alright guys, this is just a quick video of the proof of the sine sum and difference formulas, and then also the tangent sum and difference formulas. The first one I do is the sine. Remember, what we're trying to prove here is that the sine of an alpha plus beta is equal to the sine of alpha cosine of beta, the same sign that is here, and then the cosine of alpha, the sine then of beta. So we're trying to prove that. In order to prove this, there's going to be two things that we need to know. We need to know this. We need to know that the sine of, let's just say alpha, is equal to the cosine of pi over 2 minus alpha, and then the cosine of alpha is equal to the sine of pi over 2 minus alpha. Okay. And again, those could be any letter: alpha, beta, x, y, tangent, or not tangent, theta. It doesn't matter. This is just the rules that we're going to need here. First thing I'm going to do is talk about, if I have sine of alpha plus beta, per this rule here, let's go ahead and say that this is the same thing as cosine of pi over 2 minus alpha plus beta. So what we basically do is we say that this thing here is just the alpha. Say it's one thing, because it's we group it. Okay, we put parentheses around that and say it's one object. So then cosine of pi minus, or pi over 2 minus that grouping is fine. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is just I'm going to distribute that negative through here. So I get cosine of pi over 2 minus alpha minus beta. And now I'm going to regroup as pi over 2 minus alpha, and then minus that beta. Okay, so now with it positioned this way, and that's just essentially distributing a negative and regrouping in kind of a convenient way. Now what I'm going to do is actually apply the cosine difference rule, which says if you have a cosine of two angles being subtracted, it goes cosine of the first angle, cosine of the second angle, then give myself a little bit more room here. Then it's going to be the cosine of that symbol, so plus now, and now the sine of the first angle times the sine of the second angle. And at this stage, we're going to then make some substitution. I'm going to come back up here and see where it says the cosine of pi over 2 minus alpha is the same thing as sine of alpha. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that right there, because that's the cosine of pi over 2 minus alpha. I'm going to replace it with sine alpha. Bring my cosine beta down, got my plus. Now this says sine of pi over 2 minus alpha. Sine of pi over 2 minus alpha is the cosine of that alpha. So then I'll make that substitution, cosine alpha, and then I've got sine beta. And right there then we get the idea that what we started with here was sine of alpha plus beta. Sine of alpha plus beta is now equal to that. Okay. If I want to find the difference one, it's sine of alpha minus beta, which I'm going to rewrite now as the sine of alpha, okay, plus the opposite of beta. And if I go ahead and just start filling this stuff in, then it becomes sine of alpha cosine of the opposite of beta, plus then the cosine of alpha times the sine of the opposite of beta. Now we've got some even odd properties here. Cosine of a negative angle is the same as the cosine of that positive angle, so I can just do that with that negative b. And now this here remember the sine of a negative angle, actually you bring the negative out in front of the sine. So it's actually going to come out in front of this product, so you can change that to a negative. It becomes negative cosine of alpha sine of beta. So there's where we get the sine of alpha minus beta as that rule. Next thing I'm going to try is the tangent. I'm going to cut and paste some stuff here to make the writing a little bit easier, so give me 1 second. Okay, so now what we're going to work on is the generating this. Okay, so if we want tangent of s plus t, we need to remember that is the same thing as sine of s plus t over cosine of s plus t. So I'm going to figure out what sine of s plus t is. So up here it's the sine of s cosine t plus then cosine of s sine of t divided then by the cosine of s plus t. So the cosine would be cosine of s plus t. Cosine of s times cosine t minus then sine s times sine t. Okay. The next thing that we do, it's just a quick divide. I don't want to say quick, but it's a recognition that I'm actually going to divide everything by that. There's a real nice thing that happens when we divide every single term by that. So the numerator is going to be obviously the sine of s, cosine of t, now divided by that yellow thing, so cosine s, cosine t, plus then this thing here, which is cosine s, sine t, divided then by the yellow, which is cosine of s, cosine t. Now the bottom is going to be this yellow thing divided by itself, so cosine s, cosine t, divided by cosine s, cosine t. Oh, should be minus. Minus then sine of s, sine of t, divided by the yellow thing, which is cosine s, cosine t. Now it's just a matter of going through and recognizing some cancellations that can occur. If I look here, sine of s over cosine of s, because of the same argument, that's tangent of s. So we're going to rewrite that as tangent of s. Okay, this here is just a factor of 1. So tangent of s times 1. Plus then over here, I've got cosine s divided by cosine s, so there's another 1. But now sine t cosine t, well that's tangent of t. All over then, okay, this thing here is itself divided by itself, so that's a 1. Minus then, look here, sine s divided by cosine s, so that's tangent of s. And right there, sine t divided by cosine t is tangent t. So there's where we get the tangent sum formula. Now if I want to do the difference formula, it's just tangent of s plus the opposite of t. And we would go through and say, okay, well, it's going to be tangent of s plus then tangent of negative t over 1 minus tangent of s times the tangent of negative t. And if you remember, there was a even odd property that said the tangent of negative theta was equal to the opposite of tangent of theta. So wherever I see these negatives, I'm actually going to pull those out and put them out in front. So when we go tangent of s minus t, it's going to be tangent of s. That's going to become a negative tangent of positive t, now divided by 1. So that negative is going to come out in front of this product and make that a positive. So 1 plus tangent of s, tangent of t. And you can then see the tangent sum and difference formulas are generated simply through the division of sine and cosine, like it's always been. Okay, sine and cosine have always divided to give me tangent. And now this is just the same situation with now S plus T is my argument instead of just like a theta or an X. Hopefully that helps, and we will continue soon with these double angle formulas and generating those.